you. In your book, you describe your love of walking with your professional role as a lawyer, and the case of the land ownership. What I'm not clear about is, what do you think there's still a point, and will there be any success in challenging the ownership of the land that the settlers are occupying?
I think this is a very important and difficult question for me. At the end, there was a lot of attempts by Israeli settlers to buy land, and they made all kinds of attempts and paid huge amounts of money. And at the end of the day, the amount of land that actually has been sold is a tiny, tiny fraction. The rest was taken through these legal maneuvers, which I challenged and which I write about. I think that the first thing is that the Israeli courts did not rise to the challenge. I think they got the opportunity. Certainly, the High Court of Israel got the opportunity to make a change in the policy and did not use it. So they encouraged these legal maneuvers and even suggested sometimes for the government how to go about them. But I think there is if we had succeeded in striking and proving one thing to be wrong, then they would have found another thing, another way. As with the case of the wall, in the case of the wall, the advisory opinion in The Hague was very forthcoming and very clear that settlements are illegal and so on, and Israel paid no attention. But I think there is an important point, which is that for many Israelis, the idea which their government convinced them about, that they are not taking private land but public land, even when we all knew it wasn't really public land, it was private land that was declared as public land. But the fact that they could convince themselves that they're not taking anybody's land, but it was public land, made it much easier to accept, to settle, and to feel good about themselves. So I think it was important to challenge, and by failing to prove to the Israeli public, mainly, that the government is making all kinds of maneuvers and they are not really taking public land, I think it did make a difference.
I'm interested to know if you've walked in Scotland and what your response has been to the land here, and also to the ways that we relate to it in terms of ownership and recreation and so on.
Yes, I did walk in Scotland, and it was always a great pleasure. And I think, well, I learned several things. For example, in our colloquial language, the word for rain and winter is the same. So to have rain in summer is a contradiction in terms. And when I first started coming here and there was rain in summer, I felt personally offended. What is wrong? How could there be rain in summer? So it certainly got me out of that frame of mind. Now I realize that you can walk in any season, in any conditions. I appreciate highly this idea that there are people who defend their right to walk and keep the paths open by legislation, by action, by common action. Very, very, very important. And I also think it's amazing how people relate to the land and go and walk in it despite the weather conditions, which of course is a great release. I remember after the book that was dramatized, When the Bulbul Stopped Singing, after the show, one woman who's a literary agent was saying that what affected her, and she was in tears, most of all was the fact that during the invasion I couldn't walk out of my house. She said, whenever I feel upset, the way I go about it is by going out and walking. And to think that you are in a situation where you can't do this, I can't imagine it. And that comes from somebody who lives in a land like this, where there is that freedom and there is that pleasure.
I'll take a question here quickly, and then the very last question from over there.
I just wonder whether you'd like to say something about trees and your experience of trees in the landscape.
And before you answer that, we'll just take this last question from over there.
In your book, there's a scene where one of your friends says that you've lost your anger, and I was wondering if that is the case, if you've moved from the anger of perhaps youth to a resignation, or if you think that there's genuinely some hope for change and a hope for a better solution.
Trees first, then anger.
I think there are more varieties of trees in this country than in Palestine. The main trees in Palestine are the olive trees. The Israelis tried to make the land look more like the Swiss Alps and put a lot of pine trees, which can do a lot of harm because they're acidic. And I think they have regretted doing that to a large extent. But they, of course, wanted to change the way the land looked, and so there's many more pine trees. But the predominant tree is the olive tree, and it's a very great symbol, the olive tree, because it's a very hardy tree, as hardy as Palestinian owners. You can transplant it. It has shallow roots, actually, and you can easily transplant it. You don't have to even take it out and immediately plant it. You can keep it lying there for a few days and then do the planting, and it still works. I've tried it myself. The anger, you know, some people reading the book, even in this country, said, after reading the book, I became so angry. How can you not be so angry? And I think it's a privilege sometimes when you are outside of a situation and you look from the outside, and then you can be angry because you don't have to live in the situation. If I'm angry all the time, I will consume myself in anger. So that's one important thing. But I suppose also the writing makes a difference. And whether there is hope or not, I think we are living through a very harsh and dark time for Palestinians. There is so much to be angry about. The Gaza Strip is one large prison where you hear, but not only Gaza Strip, the West Bank in lesser extent, about children dying from lack of medicines, about people's futures destroyed because they can't travel, because people cannot visit each other. I mean, all kinds of horrors are happening. But at the same time, there is a lot of cultural activity taking place, and that is very important. There is an important movement in films, local films, theater, music, painting, writing, and that must be an indication that something good is still there. I mean, people have not been destroyed, and I would be really worried when the spirit of the Palestinians is completely destroyed. And I think they have shown great resilience, that even under these grim times, they can still endure, and eventually something will happen. But I can't see it yet.